Support can oftentimes feel like one of the hardest roles to carry from. It can feel like you're at the mercy of your teammates with no carry potential of your own, but today we're going to go over a few tips that will help you level up your support gameplay, giving you a better chance of solo carrying more games. Make sure you remember to hit that like button so we can keep putting out more awesome content for you guys, and subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's get right into those juicy support tips, starting with something that's going to help you absolutely dominate the laning phase. Now, there are two really important things in the laning phase as a support that you're going to have to master if you want to exhibit controlled aggression. The first is playing around your level power spikes. This is when you hit level 2 and level 3 or even level 6. And the second is positioning in the lane. Now, first up is playing around level power spikes. In order to do this, you need to first understand that level 2 is going to happen on the second wave after 3 melee minions have died, and level 3 is going to happen on the 4th wave after, again, 3 melee minions have died. When I'm playing ADC, what most supports will do is they will play behind me for the vast majority of the laning phase. So even if we do have shove advantage and we hit level 2 before the enemy lane, it doesn't mean anything because my support is not playing aggressive and they're not using that level advantage. While this is not the worst case scenario for your lane, my support isn't going to die if they play behind me, and I'm going to be fine to farm 1v2. It's not the best case scenario. As a support, if you ever want a chance at carrying, you can't play behind your ADC for the entire game. There are two reasons why playing behind your ADC is so bad, at least in the laning phase as a support. The first reason is because if you're behind your ADC as a support, this means that both the enemy support and the ADC are going to have free access to trade onto your ADC without you pressuring that at all. Your ADC will constantly get zoned, they'll constantly lose trades because you can't win a trade 1 versus 2 as an ADC. Even if your ADC kites and positions perfectly in a lane, sometimes they won't be able to deal with pressure from two different sources. This is why it's very important to play even with your ADC or even in front of them. Now, the second reason why playing behind your ADC as a support is so bad is because when you go to trade as a support, you're going to put yourself in a very bad position. When you walk up, you're going to be stacked directly on top of your ADC, meaning if the enemy has any AoE abilities, like Caitlyn Q for example, you're both going to take poke damage from one ability. Now, if you're not pathing directly through your ADC in order to trade, it means that you're going around your ADC instead, which is going to take too long, and it means that you're not going to be able to get that trade off well. Now, it's going to take a lot of getting used to be able to consistently play even or in front of your ADC. But once you are able to master that, then you're going to be seeing a lot more success in your laning phase. This means that more often than not, your ADC is going to be getting to their item power spikes before the enemy ADC, which gives you a better shot of winning. So how can we position even with our ADC without taking too much damage while still pressuring the proper amount? First, we just need to establish where exactly you want to be in the lane. Typically, the ADC is going to be closer to the river, and you will be closer to the alcove, but this can flip. If your ADC is wanting to play close to the alcove and the brushes, that's something that you can't change, and you just want to ensure that you're not playing on the same side of the lane as them. This is going to exert the most pressure possible. Alternatively, if you're playing a pick like Karma, who can't poke through a wave, but does have really good poke, then playing on the top side of the lane will result in you being able to land your poke a little bit easier. This is because instead of being able to dodge side to side in the lane, they're going to be having to move forward or back, which is a lot harder to do for most people. Everyone will instinctively just walk backwards towards their tower in order to avoid poke. They won't be comfortable pushing forward into you in order to avoid that poke and trade with you. This is why you can exert so much more pressure as Karma or Ezreal if you play on the top side of the lane rather than the bottom side of the lane. Speaking of leveling up your gameplay, our website, GameLeap.com, is the best way for you to do that. We've got courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion-specific courses. So If you are looking to take your play to the next level, whether that's in a specific role or on a certain champion, we've got something there for you. Next, we should establish when exactly you want to be going for your trades. Just because you're playing even with your ADC does not mean that you're constantly looking for trades. The biggest thing that you need to capitalize on is when the enemy support and ADC are out of line. If the enemy support is playing miles behind their ADC, then you can just walk up and trade with the enemy ADC for free. If they're going for CS, they won't be able to trade back and you will always win that trade. Alternatively, if the enemy support is playing too aggressive, then you can just trade with the support and let the enemy ADC continue farming, doing their own thing. Poke damage onto either the support or the ADC is good here. A lot of people will completely ignore the enemy support and tunnel vision on the ADC, trying to get a kill on them or force them to base, but if you're able to do the same thing to the support, then you're still giving yourself a good chance to win that lane later on. A really good rule of thumb to follow is if you're even with your ADC and both of you can hit one of the targets on the enemy team without both of them being able to hit one of your targets, then you should win that trade and you should go for it. You're able to continue the trade for as long as this rule remains true, but as soon as it does not ring true anymore, then it means that you need to disengage unless you're looking for an all-in. Don't tunnel vision so hard that you turn a winning trade for yourself into a losing trade. It is okay to take a ton of teeny trades that are just one auto attack and one ability over and over again in the lane. Remember that bot lane is a very slow paced lane. Your first back, oftentimes you're going to be looking for a BF sword from the ADC, which means you're going to be farming for a long time. Use this knowledge to slowly whittle both the enemy ADC and support out of the lane, which will allow you to get an item advantage. If they're not able to afford a BF sword, then the next best thing is oftentimes going to be a pickaxe or 2 long swords, depending on what champion you're playing. Having a BF sword into a pickaxe or 2 long swords is a huge advantage for you, and it means that you'll start being able to take a lot riskier trades. While the lane phase is very important, probably the most important part of being a support currently, there are other stages of the game where support does have other responsibilities, so we'll still cover those as well. First up is in the mid game. Now, this is probably the trickiest part of playing support because in the mid game, you still want to be gaining EXP. You're going to have to play close to your ADC to make sure that they don't get 3 or 4 man ganked and just die. And you still need to get objective control. This is going to be of things like Dragon or Rift Herald. So how do you know where you should be and when? Well, the best way to know exactly where you should be is by getting as much information on the enemy team as possible. Best way to get this information is by utilizing deep wards. The key thing with deep wards is you don't want to just wander into the enemy jungle for no reason without knowing where everyone on the enemy team is. If you go into the enemy jungle alone with 3 or 4 members of the enemy team missing, chances are you're going to have a bad time. For this reason, you want to use the buddy system as much as possible. Go into the enemy jungle with a friend, either your ADC, your jungle, or your mid laner, even your top laner. It doesn't matter who. Just make sure somebody else is there with you when you're dropping your wards. This will make things a little bit safer because if you do get jumped by 1 or 2 members of the enemy team, your chances of survival have probably doubled. This will also make it so you can get deeper wards as well. Deep wards are going to give you so much information that you're not going to be able to have without them. You'll be able to track where the enemy jungler is at all times. You're going to be able to spot any roams that are happening. All of these things will prevent needless deaths from occurring. That is your job as a support. You want to prevent deaths whenever you can and make plays whenever you can. If you have a pick-based jungler on your team or mid laner, or if you're playing a pick-based support, then these wards will also give you the option of picking in the enemy jungle. You have deep wards in the enemy jungle and you're playing Blitzcrank, and their jungler walks into 2 or 3 of your teammates all stacked in one brush. All you have to do is hook that person, knock them up, and they will die. You can use this deep vision in order to get you a pick and turn that pick into a dragon or a Rift Herald in the mid game. This is going to give you huge leads, all from vision, and that's it. Now, there will be some cases where you place your deep vision and you can't do anything with it because your jungler or mid laner is farming and nobody will come with you in order to perform a pick, and that's completely okay. You just want the deep vision, mainly in order to prevent deaths from happening, and you can go back to your lane with your ADC and continue helping them survive and farm. It's okay to sit with no wards in your inventory as a support during the mid game if you are helping your ADC survive and farm. If your ADC does not need your help in order to survive and farm and you don't have any wards, then you should immediately go back to the base to get more wards. So once they clear your wards out, you can just be a pain and place them right back where they were. The only times that it's acceptable for you to be sitting on no wards as a support in the mid game is if either your ADC needs help surviving or you are currently looking for a play. If none of these things are happening, place some wards, go back to the base and get more wards. This is going to give you as much vision as possible. Remember, you're buying Moby Boots to get you back to wherever you need to be quickly. Transitioning into the late game, it's pretty similar to the mid game, except now you shouldn't be babysitting your ADC anymore. If they can't assign themselves to the right lane and survive without you, while you stick with your jungler or tank player in order to secure good vision for your team, then there's nothing you can do to carry that player. In the late game, the support's #1 job is to ensure that you have vision of the primary objective and the enemy does not. This could be Baron, it could be Elder Dragon, it could be sieging a inhibitor tower. All of these things are primary objectives that are very common in the late game, and you need to know how to play around each of them. They're all very similar. You want a pink ward in order to deny enemy vision on top of the primary objective. This could be Baron or Elder. And you want your own wards to help give you vision around that objective. The biggest problem that I see with most support players in the late game is they want to make sure that their vision covers one huge area instead of a bunch of different small areas. You do not need to place 3 wards directly on top of an objective to give you an uninterrupted line of sight on an objective. This is not important. It is much better to just get 1 or 2 wards directly on top of the objective, and then get 2 wards deeper in the enemy jungle to cover any choke points going towards the objective. Remember, you don't need exact vision of where everyone on the enemy team is. As long as you can see them coming into the fight, then you'll know that they're there. You're also going to have other people who do have wards for these areas if in the middle of a fight they need one. Now, unfortunately as a support, you can only place 1 control ward at a time, but you can still buy multiples of them. It is very important that in the late game as a support, you always go back to base and purchase a full stack of control wards. If you are a support player that does not purchase control wards, you are doing something very, very wrong. You can put control wards on Baron, you can put control wards on choke points and perform picks. You can put control wards in the middle of a lane and deny deep vision on rotations. You can put control wards anywhere and they will usually be useful. As long as you don't put it directly under the enemy tower, it's going to at least serve some purpose. Finally, let's talk about how you should be using your sweeper in the late game. There are a lot of supports that I will see who will just randomly use the sweeper in one small area whenever it's off cooldown, which is not at all how you want to be using this item. If your goal is to deny vision in one very small area, then you should be using control wards to do that. The sweeper should be used when you're looking to deny vision over a huge area. This is typically going to be useful when performing a rotation. If you go from mid lane to Baron, then you can activate sweeper along this path and clear out all the vision on this path, which will give you a clear shot all the way from mid lane into Baron without the enemy team knowing. Now, this does not have to just be from mid lane to Baron. This can be any rotation at all. Sweeping through a rotation is going to do a few things. First of all, it's going to deny vision on that rotation, meaning if you ever decide to rotate back to your original position, you're not going to be walking over a billion wards while doing it. Next, if you do end up clearing a bunch of wards from the enemy support, it's going to force them to go back to the base and get more wards. This will give you an opportunity where you have 5 members of your team and they only have 4. Finally, if you remove vision from choke points during this rotation, then you turn those spots into death traps for the enemy team. They can't approach these choke points without knowing whether or not there's going to be 5 people stacked inside of it. All these things should keep you very busy as a support in the late game. If you ever find yourself walking aimlessly around not really knowing what to do, then ask yourself if you should be doing one of these things. Yes, sometimes it is the proper play to follow your team around in the late game and just wait for a team fight to occur, but other times you're going to want to be proactive and make plays happen with vision or vision denial. Now, developing the game sense to know when you should be doing each one of these things is going to take a bit of time, but if you're able to work at it and develop this game sense over time, you'll definitely see a lot of improvement in your play, and you'll see a lot more carry potential from this role. Support really is a very good role for solo carrying as long as you know what you're doing. If you're looking for more content from us, then you can check us out over at our website, GameLeap.com. Over there, we've got hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We've got courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses. Recently, I've been posting some guides exclusively to our website, so if you want to see those, then make sure to check us out using the link in the description below. As always, I'm Panther. I hope you learned something valuable, and I'll see you in the next one.